morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And welcome back. I've been on a bit of a break, so good to see everyone again, virtually anyway. We are here to talk about the Jira board configuration certification offered by Atlassian. Now, if you go sign up for this, you'll see it called the ACA-905. So that is a designation if you're going to choose to earn this exam. You'll hear me kind of call it between these two different things. Dan uses an oak board to attack his users. I can't recommend attacking your users with bits of wood, but I can understand the frustration, Dan. So if you haven't already, take a look at the little poll I dropped up there. One of those answers is a joke. Hopefully you can all tell which one is the joke. But I have one quick change I got to make to a slide. Ada, I missed you all as well. Again, took a little bit of a summer holiday, which was very badly needed. Otherwise, we are going to talk about boards in Jira. Now, there's a lot of different concepts and ideas and things about them. So we'll talk about some general concepts around Jira. We'll talk about what the exam is today. And then we're going to dig into some other concepts and topics and ideas about boards. I will explain how I've broken up these sessions. There are, I want to say 4 or 5 in this particular arc to cover all of the topics. And we're going to dig into every aspect of boards that we can get to in those few weeks. My goal is to ensure that everyone watching and listening is familiar with what's going on. And Chad, it's funny you say that. When we started, these were 45 minutes and not nearly long enough. So we're going to jump in and learn about boards. So first, I got to find my beautiful slides that I certainly didn't make in a rush the other night. All right, here we go. One thing I will call out, I am starting to build out online learning courses around all of these topics. I don't have the one ready for this course yet. However, the QR code right under my head will let you sign up to get notified when the course is live. I'll have 2 options or 3 learning options. YouTube will always be free. So I'll keep doing these. But if you want to get notified when I have a Udemy course and a course with a voucher available, use this QR code right here. The bottom QR code will show you other learning courses I have. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rob. I spent my career in information technology, mostly working in HR and IT systems. And I started using Jira in one of those jobs, and I was never trained. No one ever told me how boards worked. No one ever told me what a filter was or how to use JQL to search. I was just expected to figure it out. And that's why I do these trainings. I want to make sure folks know how to use these tools, because otherwise we end up being forced to use them. And it gets very frustrating. I guarantee all of you have had that experience at some point, and I also guarantee you that folks on your teams that you work with or that you help manage or that you help lead also have the same frustrations. So because of that, I'm now doing this type of training and stuff professionally. So I am now a content creator, a trainer. You'll see me doing a lot of these live streams to help ensure folks like you know how these work. And a fun fact, I've never actually used a physical Sprint or Kanban or Scrum board. I've always only ever used digital ones. So maybe I'll get rid of this what kind of boards question. One of you is still saying an oak board, which I'm not quite sure what to say about that. But you'll see me use these polls to solicit information. And that's where interaction on YouTube can be challenging. It's great when we can do these live and we can be in the same room. Tushar, good to see you, my friend. But please use the chat. Many of you have already found it. It should be right over there, over my left shoulder. Drop your questions in there. Ask me to back up or slow down. Interact with other people. Share what you know. Because there are going to be things that someone in this stream knows that I don't. So please help other people learn, and please interact. Chad is saying only wrong answers on the polls. I try and make them so to encourage accurate or correct answers from you. But I might put in a couple of joke ones like oak board. Please subscribe to the channel. I am doing regular content, a lot of live streams, but also recorded stuff that'll get you updates. And the easiest way to support me is just hit the thumbs up button. It's right at the bottom. That lets me know you like this content, but also lets other people find it. There are more people out there who want to learn the 905 or could benefit from it. So please hit the like button, and that helps other people get access to this information. So that's the easiest way to support me. I'll remind you about that as we go. And also consider sharing this with other folks on your team. There are other people you work with who will be configuring boards who will benefit, I promise. A quick agenda just for today. This session is intended to get us started learning about how boards operate, what they are, some basic concepts. So we're going to talk about things like just basics around Jira. Many of us are probably familiar with this, so I'll go pretty quickly through them. But in order to use boards, we have to understand what statuses are. And in order to use columns, we have to know what transitions do. So there's a couple of concepts we're going to talk about first before we get hands-on in a Jira Premium Cloud instance. And everything I show you will work in every version of Cloud. If there's a difference, Corey, you're very welcome, my friend. If there's a difference between versions of Cloud, I'll do my best to call it out. The biggest difference is if you see any kind of AI tool, that's going to be in Premium or Enterprise right now. For you folks on Data Center, this will also be very familiar. It might not be identical in terms of UI, but most of the concepts should be the same. So we'll talk about what boards are and how they use them, the difference between the two types of boards we get. And in the poll on your screen, there are Scrum and Kanban boards in Jira. Scrumban and other types of boards don't exist. So within Jira, we're going to use one of these two things. And I am referring to just stock Jira. There might be add-ons that change how it works. But for the purpose of these trainings, I'll be using just standard Jira. Welcome, Fernando and Kima. Good to see you. And then I'll go back and forth between the slides and getting hands-on, and slides and getting hands-on. I will spend most of my time getting hands-on to show you how it works, to show you the look and feel, to demonstrate how this tool can support our work. So this is the exam. This is what we will be talking about. Now, you do not have to take the exam to benefit from this, so please keep that in mind. Many people choose to learn these topics and concepts to be better at their job, to satisfy curiosity, and we'll talk about why you're here in a minute. But if you're going to earn this certification, the Jira board configuration, I forget the full name, the 905 as it were, this is how it's broken up. And this breakdown is important because it can help us understand what Atlassian thinks is the most important part or the most important thing for us to learn. Looking at this, configuring board permissions is the biggest single area. So this tells me as an admin, I should really focus on this a lot. The other things are important. I'm not saying don't ignore them, but this helps guide our studying. And so these sessions will give us the information, but really if you want to earn that certification, and even if you really want to learn this stuff, you can't rely just on the 1 hour we get every Friday. You're going to have to go get hands-on in a demo instance. You're going to have to go play with this in your corporate environment safely. You're going to have to go study on your own, review stuff, and practice. So I'll do my best to cover all of this across the next few weeks, but it's on each of you to really dig in and put in the time to learn the concepts. So another question, and I'm going to get rid of the what kind of board have you used. At least 2 people said an oak board, which is fascinating. Hopefully, I mean, you physically had a board up on the wall. Why are you interested in this course? And I'll put a couple ideas in a poll, but also feel free to comment. And there's no wrong reason. This is something that's important to keep in mind. There's no wrong reason to want to learn something. However, by understanding our why do we do the thing, it will help us stay motivated. It'll help us stay on track. It'll help us connect better with the information, because when we're in there having to fight our way through permissions or learn something important, going back to why you're doing this will make it easier to get over that hurdle. It'll make it easier for you as a human to motivate yourself and then to keep going. So take a minute to consider this, and I'll ask about this every couple of sessions. You might want to write this down on a sticky note and put it by your computer so you can come back to it. And you can see I didn't even update this slide. I just copied it in. But there's many reasons to learn about the 905. One is to expand your skills. And honestly, this is why I am doing these and earning these certifications, because I know there are things I don't know, and I don't even know what they are. So by going through and earning these certifications, I am studying and learning the things that will help me be a better version of me. So I'm expanding my knowledge base. Another very valid reason, though, is you want to validate your skills. You want to prove to yourself that you know how this works. Or maybe you want to prove to other people. Maybe in your job, there's an opportunity for promotion, or there's a job you're looking at that needs to know how to configure boards. That is also a very valid reason. Just wanting to earn a certification is also a valid reason. Part of me enjoys that. I get to say I have the ACA-905. I am certified, even if I don't use that to apply for a job. Dan, I'm glad you're here, my friend, and welcome. You're going to see me here every Friday, so you're welcome to continue to join me. And I also have other sessions Mondays and usually Tuesdays and Thursdays. I've already asked that joking question about what boards have we used. So that's kind of all the preamble. That's getting us into our topics. So keeping in mind your why, now we're going to transition to what boards are. And I'll keep that poll question up. I'll keep swapping it out. And as a quick reminder, if you like this, hit that little like button in the bottom. Quickest, easiest way to support me. Also helps other people find it. Got about 35 folks in here and about 13 likes, which is amazing. Now, boards are just a way to visualize work. We're seeing a screenshot of a board in Jira, but people did start using physical boards. So it might be, if your whole team is in one office, there might be a whiteboard on the wall with sticky notes on it that represent your work. And as you move through the process of working, you move that sticky note around and everyone can see, oh, there are 15 tasks by Rob in the third column. That's where Rob is. Or, oh, Rob is stuck in this particular column. Let's go help him out because I can just see that. I don't have to ask him. Many teams, because they are not co-located, they're not all in the same building, use virtual boards. And so that's the focus of this certification. How do we set up these boards to support those teams that are not co-located, not all in the same spot? Now, they're very, very common in Agile projects. And so because of that and because of how Atlassian has set up their boards, we're going to spend some time talking about Agile concepts and ideas because that will explain why and how the boards are set up the way they are. And this will also help you, it doesn't only help you understand why it's set up that way, it'll help you understand how to use it, but also help you understand how to ask for help or go out there and talk to other people about it. Stereotypically, software teams are going to be using Agile. So this is something that many people think of Jira and they go, oh, it's just for software development. It is for software development, but it's really for any team that wants to benefit from and use Agile to get their work done. So don't limit your thinking in terms of you have to be a software developer to use it. Limit your thinking in terms of, oh, we have to track our work visually. And that for me is a better way to signal, oh, we could try using a board. The other thing to consider is the best practice, and what I'm going to walk through here is not the only way to use the tool. So I'll just be providing you with a good foundation that will help you earn the certification. You might also tinker with it and find other ways to, I'll say, hack the system or use it differently. Now, before we really dig into boards, we have to zoom up a bit and understand a bit about Jira. And I'll go through this a bit quickly, but please let me know if you want more context or in-depth information about these topics because they're super important. Jira projects, which will soon be called spaces, are a collection of work items, a collection of tickets. And it's just a way to organize what we're doing. So in the context of boards, a board will pull work items out of a project. And depending on the kind of board we have, we might be limited only to work items from the project the board is in, or we can pull in work items from multiple projects. And we'll talk about those more advanced use cases as we progress through the series. The thing to understand about projects is they can have different configurations, different permissions, different settings, different admins. So as you're using Jira, you're going to bump into projects that are set up differently that will impact how you can set up and use a board. For example, you need the board admin permission to go do anything, to configure boards, and that relates on the project setup. So keep in mind, the project is the container for all the work, but also for the board you'll be working in. Now, these work items, formerly called, I'll say the word issues, are the individual bits of work that you and your team are working on. And this is really the most important individual piece that we need to consider because this is what would be moving around our board. And how the work items are set up can impact and cause frustrations to the people using the boards. For example, the underlying workflows, which we'll talk about in a minute, or the statuses a work item can move through, will impact how your team can use a board. And that workflow can be different for different types of work items. So this can be very frustrating for your team. So you as a certified admin or just as a non-certified knowledgeable admin have to understand that the underlying work items can impact how your team uses the board that you've set up. And this is one of the biggest sources of frustration I find for end users where they just don't understand everything going on underneath the hood. Tushar's got a great point here. I mentioned projects have permissions. The project admin permission is different than board admin. So in many places, this is the same person. I, Rob, will be both project and board admin. However, in other organizations, maybe Corey is the project admin and Tushar is the board admin. And that's just how it's been split up. So this is another source of frustration that I ran into when I moved between projects. I'm a project admin. Why can't I modify the board? So keep that in mind as well as you're considering your setup. Now, workflows are also critical to understanding of boards. When you look at a board, it's really easy to think each column is a status. This is incorrect. Each column is a column, and each column can be mapped to one or more statuses. And we'll see this when we go live, but this is another source of frustration. It is possible for multiple statuses to be mapped to one column. And this is where it gets very easy for team members just to click and drag stuff and end up throwing things in the wrong status because they don't realize that the in-progress status is comprised of 4 other statuses, or in-progress column. So the workflow of the work item is really important. The transitions, or how the items can move between statuses, is also super important because if the transition between in-progress and architecture review doesn't exist, I can't drag it into that column from in-progress. So we'll be looking at the board, we'll be frustrated at the board for not doing something, when really we have to understand the underlying workflow to know how work items can move through the project. So this is just something else I'm calling attention to, that as admins, we have to kind of expand our vision and be aware of the other things that are going on in the project so we can best support our teams. So those were some of the general Jira concepts. And I'll keep coming back to these, and we will see these show up, especially as we dig deeper into things like permissions and like practicing using a board. But now there's some board-specific concepts and ideas we need to understand. I've mentioned these columns before. Great, these are the vertical parts of the board. Now, if you had a physical whiteboard, you might draw these with like a marker, but each one will have some kind of name, and it relates to this stage of a process. If we were building a car, the stage of the process might be painting it, or installing the doors, or tightening the wheels. I don't know, I don't build cars. But from left to right, typically work will go from left to right. So my to-do, my I haven't started yet, my pending work is on the left side, and then all the way on the right side is some kind of done status. I've released the code. I've answered the question. I've written the policy. Whatever that end status is. Now, each column has to have at least one status mapped to it. So this is where I can't have a column called accepted without having a status in that column. Confusingly, the name of the column doesn't have to match the status. So this is where many folks get mixed up where they're using it. These are not swim lanes, Chad. So this is an important call out and something that we have to, I'll use the term word police. Be very careful. When I say swim lanes, I am not talking about vertical columns on a board. You might call this that with your team, but for the purposes of these trainings, this is not a swim lane. This is a column. And I'll get to swim lanes in a moment. Now, we can change the names of the columns, and this is where we can kind of help out our team. Again, I might have a column called in progress, and that column contains multiple statuses. So I can visually simplify the board by compressing statuses into a column. Again, it's an in-progress state of work. And I make it easier for my team because they can just see, oh, I've got to do, in progress, and done. Easier, when in reality, there's really 4 statuses in the middle. Now, to Chad's comment and why I jumped on him there, a swim lane is a row. It's horizontal. And swim lanes, we can group the work items in the columns, and I'll show you what this looks like. But they're the rows on a board, and you have different swim lanes you can use. Now, I'm kind of laughing at Chad's comment. There is nothing wrong with doing something differently. What I am just showing you here will reflect what you'll see on that ACA-905 and what Atlassian has intended for us to do. However, if your team wants to call the vertical things swim lanes, do it. Just keep in mind as you talk to other people in the ecosystem or as you change jobs or teams, that term could mean something different. So one thing I always do when I join a team is say, all right, this will sound silly, but what do you call the vertical bit on the board? A swim lane? Awesome. Cool. What do you call the horizontal bit? Something else? Great. Just to make sure we all understand terms. And that is something that, as an admin, we are responsible for doing, but it's not going to be on the exam necessarily. It's just part of our job. We have to understand the buttons and how swim lanes work. However, we also have to understand we are the thought leader. We are the guide. We are the person who can help the team better use the tool. We're not just the person pushing buttons. So please keep that in mind as well. So Chad, if you would like to call the vertical thing swim lanes, please do that. Just be aware when I call it a swim lane, I mean these horizontal bits. Now, these swim lanes make it easy for us to organize information. My personal favorite is to group all of these by the assignee. So in this example, I can see admin has these work items, Alana has these work items, the next person down would have those. And when we get live in a demo, I'll show you we can collapse them. So for my sprint stand-ups, the things I do on a regular basis to chat with the team, I would group by assignee so I can quickly see Fernando has these work items, Chad has those, Corey has these, and it makes it easier to visualize the work. Now they are optional, so you don't have to use them. However, many teams find them useful because it quickly visually sorts information for you. There are other ways we'll talk about to visually sort information like filters or by filtering by work item type. But swim lanes are a very useful way to do that. Now the smallest bit of thing, one of the smallest things you'll see on a board is a card. And this is just a visual representation of a work item. So each of these cards is just a different work item in the project. MOBL 8 or 9 or MOBL 11. Now, generally, boards will have work items from a single project. However, some boards can have work items from multiple projects. So it is possible for us as admins to set up a board to pull in work items from 6 different projects to give someone a single place to go to see how things are doing. So please keep that in mind as well. As admins, we need to understand in a team-managed project, we're stuck with just the work items in the project. But in other company-managed projects, we can mix and match. Now, the cards are also what our team members will most likely be interacting with. They'll be clicking and dragging them around the columns. Typically, work goes from left to right, but there's nothing stopping you from clicking and dragging backwards. The only thing that would prevent that is a transition is missing. So if there's no if there's no transition from testing to coding, I couldn't go backwards, for example. Okay, that was a ton of concepts. This is my reminder to take a quick coffee break. And also, please hit that little like button. That's going to be the easiest way to support me in the channel. And also, I have a quick Google Forms for you. I am putting together online learning courses for all of the ACA trainings, the ACA-910, ITSM with Jira Service Management, ACA-900, Jira Software Essentials are already complete, but I'm working on a full-length course for this certification. So these tend to be between 1 and 2 hours. They include practice exams, quizzes, interactivity. If you're interested in getting notified when the course is ready, and it will be for purchase, click on that link. If you sign up early too, I'll give you a discount code. So if you're interested in getting a recorded version of this entire course that is specific and will walk you through all the training, hit that link. Just let me know your email, and I'll make sure you get updated. Yes, what Tushar is referring to is Atlassian is updating its terminology. I briefly mentioned this, but soon we will not have Jira projects anymore. They'll be Jira spaces. So you'll see me word policing myself there as well. I'm going to drop another quick poll. Just a simple one. Have you ever been a Jira board admin? Now, you may or may not have been trained. I was never trained. But just curious how many people have actually had this access, just to get a feeling for what folks have had. Here I am in Confluence, which is not where I want to be. So I'm going to go over to Jira. And there are 2 major flavors of projects. We have, actually 3, I guess, software, service management, and business. We're going to dig into an example project called Mobile Dev. Now, I like this project because it's got a lot of good stuff in it. And we can see that this project has multiple boards, a Cowboys, a Kanban, and a Baltimore. If I open up this other project though, JQuil JSM, this is a different kind of project, Jira Service Management. So one thing as admins we need to understand is not every project can support or have or need a board. It is possible to visualize work items, in different projects in different ways. But please keep in mind that as we interact with projects, how they're set up will impact how they look and feel. In this example, demo 1, there's no drop down to see boards. This is a team managed project. So it just has an item here called board. And you'll notice it doesn't say Kanban, it doesn't say Scrum, it just says board. Most of our training and most of what I dig into with everyone will be in a software project though. It will be in a company managed software project because this is where we get the Scrum and Kanban boards, and this is where we get the ability to have multiple boards in a single project. So this is the most complex use case. As we go through this course together, I will dig in. Are they turned on, Dan? My friends at YouTube like to default these things on. Hang on. That should have shut them off. Ping me again, Dan, if they keep coming. Thank you for that. Where was I? Right, active sprints. So this is the most complex way to set up a project is I can have multiple boards, but keep in mind in like a team managed project, you'll just get one. And that's one important distinction we have to keep in mind. Team managed projects can be great depending on the use case, but many times we need a little bit more complexity. So the first thing I'll dig into here is just the different kinds of boards. This is a Scrum board, and there's a couple reasons I know this. First, it has a backlog tab, and it has an active sprints. So if I see a backlog tab, that tells me right away Scrum. Now, one thing to call out, it is possible to rename these. So always double check that it is in fact the backlog tab. And you can tell just by clicking on it. And what you'll get is a list of sprints or something called the backlog. And I'll come back to this to talk about what it's for and why we have it. The next way I know this is Scrum is because of this active sprints. Now, Scrum uses sprints to manage its work. They call them iterations, which is a 1 to 4 week work cycle. Depends on your team and how long you want them to be. But in Scrum, my team has sat down and said, hey, from the backlog, we're going to take these items and we're going to commit to completing them all in 2 weeks. And that's all I see on this board. So a big difference between Scrum and the other kind of board, Kanban, is in Scrum, the team is committed to this work. And you'll notice there's no backlog here. This is to focus the team just on what they've committed to. And within this board, they can click and move things around and change statuses, and they can take different actions on it. The other way I know this is Scrum is I see the word sprint. So the other kind of board, Kanban, does not operate in sprints. So if you see the word sprint, complete sprint, start sprint, sprint dates, that's an instant signal that you're in a Scrum board. And that means it'll be time bound. It'll do things like a burn down, a burn up chart, other features we'll talk about as we go. Popping over to my other kind of board, Kanban, you'll notice it looks very, very similar. I instantly know this is Kanban because it's called a Kanban board. That sounds kind of silly to say, but that's the default name. The other way I know this is a Kanban board is the column header is red. Now, Kanban's focus isn't on keep the team focused for 2 weeks on some work they said they would commit. Kanban's focus is on making sure you have a smooth workflow. And one way it does this is by visually calling out, hey, you've exceeded some limit in this column. This is telling me I have too many things in progress. It's red. If it was yellow, I wouldn't have enough things in progress. So suggesting my team is oversubscribed, they're working on too much stuff. And I, as the board admin, might come in here or talk to the team lead and say, hey, someone's overloaded. You got to get rid of vendor dashboard. And you'll see that turn back to red. The other thing about Kanban, there's no backlog. So that tab just straight up doesn't exist. Instead, Kanban will list all of the work items that meet its criteria in the first column. Now, there are similarities between them. Those are the big differences. Agile has this time-bound iteration thing, and velocity and all these other, what do they call them now? Not meetings, not rituals, events. Whereas Kanban is focused more on the workflow. They do have similarities. They have these columns that you've noticed. And as a board admin, I might say, you know what? I need to change the limits. Or maybe I'll even get rid of this or move it around. I can also go in and change the name. And the name of the column, again, does not have to match the name of the status. So this is where Chad's team calls them swim lanes. Awesome. He may want to call this first column not working on this yet, or we haven't decided to do this, or wouldn't it be great if, or any other name that makes sense for his team. They also support clicking and dragging. And you'll notice the done column just has one big status, done, but the middle one has 4 options. This is where a column can support multiple statuses. I will show you in future trainings how we do this. This is nice because it simplifies. It says my team is in progress. They're working on these items, and that lets me limit how much work they're working on or keep an eye on someone oversubscribing. However, I need to be careful that when I click and drag, I put it into the right status. Is it in progress or accepted or testing? This is where if your team isn't paying attention, they will end up just mindlessly dragging things into the wrong status. And this does update the work item. So you can end up inadvertently putting things in the wrong status if you do this multiple status to column mapping. Again, as an admin, we have to be aware of leading the team and helping them understand why we're doing something and not just setting it up and walking away. We're also responsible for training them how to use the thing. We have a whole bunch of different ways to filter and search. Please share this with your teams. Make sure they know they can filter in here and just look for keywords. So I just need work items with password in them or some other keyword. I can filter just by individual. Just show me admin's work items. Very quick way of seeing what's going on. Dan, I'll come back to that in just a second. I like the call out. I can filter by epic. So if we're using epics, which are a larger bucket of work items, we can just quickly see which epics are in use. Work item type, label, and then we have this thing called quick filters. We'll cover how to make these. I find these insanely useful, and I usually show quick filters because then they show up as these buttons. And I can say, hey, what's been updated by the team recently? Again, as the board admin, we need to be working with our team to understand what do they need to easily see on the board. And so by sitting down and talking with them to say, hey, what would be helpful to get access to easily? Okay, quick coffee break for Rob and a quick like break for the team. We've got 45 folks, about 20 likes. So please like this if you like it. Easiest way to support me. Also check out that QR code directly under my head to sign up to get notified when this course comes. All right, I'll pop over to these questions and then keep talking about board similarities. Oh, interesting. In team managed spaces, Jira work management, if an admin creates different workflows for different work types, the board might not display all the work issues. Interesting. I'll go take a look at that one, Dan. Most of the work I happen to have done was in Jira's company managed projects because team managed projects didn't exist when I was really a board admin. It just wasn't a thing. But we will cover these differences as we go. Today, we're just trying to get a basic understanding of the major differences between boards and what they can and can't do and support. But we will be digging into some of the differences between project types and then also all the view settings and other things we've got. Can I make a private board? The board itself doesn't have view permissions. If you can see the project, typically you can see the board. I will dig into that one. I'm sure there are ways to flip off. However, I'd be curious, Fernando, why would you want a private board? And I'm asking that because typically with Jira, we have a team working on stuff, and I want everyone to see what's going on so they can help out, so they can help me dig in and solve and bust down these barriers and complete the work, as opposed to having to, squirrel something away and only show it to a select few people. So if you can provide more information, that would be helpful. And one spot you can do that is this chat. I do also have a Discord server going where about 200 folks talking about different Atlassian topics. That is a great place to go to get regular updates, ask questions, and interact with a lot of folks. Karen, I like that suggestion. Curious if that would help you out, Fernando. And thank you for jumping in, Karen. I really appreciate that. So I spoke about filters. Grouping is where we do the swim lanes. Sorry, Chad. But this is where I can tell the board, make the rows grouped by assignee, or make the rows grouped by epic. You'll notice I also have a group by project. And that's because in this board, I could pull in from multiple places. In this example, I don't think I've done that. I think every work item happens to be in the same project. But this group by makes it very easy to, again, look through what's going on in the board and how can I better slice and dice and view the information. And that, as long as you can view the board, you can group by, very straightforward. They also have board insights, which is just some kind of built-in analytics. Depending on the board, you'll get more or less. This is relatively new. This may require premium or higher. I don't know off the top of my head. But in Scrum boards, it'll show you things like burn down, what's been added to the sprint. In Kanban boards, it'll show you things that are stuck or need your attention. We also get this view settings. Again, just taking a look at everything in here. And we can see, how do we want to open work items in the sidebar or as an overlay? Do we want quick filters to show up or work suggestions to appear? And then last, I've got a couple of options available just for things like adding a version or starting a stand-up. So these are the big similarities. They'll all have columns. They'll have statuses in those columns, and I can click and drag between them. We got to keep in mind the differences, though. Again, if I see a backlog, that means Scrum. So if I go to my Scrum board and I go into my backlog, I'll see each of these, and I'll see they have dates associated to them. So typically as the board admin or the Scrum Master or the team lead, I would come in and have the ability to create new sprints to then add things to. And I'm noticing there's now a plan whiteboard button. That's kind of neat. But again, sprints are Scrum, no sprints, Kanban. All right, going to get rid of that board admin question. Now I've spoken with about Agile a bit. But again, we have to be familiar with how Agile operates and the concepts. And just a quick question, do you use Agile methodologies? Again, here we're mainly focused on Kanban and Scrum. Things like extreme programming may or may not be supported, things like pair programming, Scrumban. But if you have an understanding of Agile, it will make it much easier to understand how the boards work. And I've spoken a little bit about by this. Tushar group by, that button makes the swim lanes. So when you group by, you're creating the swim lanes by that thing. Group by project makes swim lanes by project. Again, for the purposes of Jira, we're considering just Scrum and Kanban. It's hard to find good pictures of this, except people just sitting at a table staring at each other. So on the top, the term Scrum comes from rugby. And Kanban originated in, I think, Toyota car manufacturing. So I tried to find a picture of that. One thing to keep in mind is both are good tools. Both are good methodologies. It depends on how we use the tool. The analogy I use, if I have a hammer and I smash my finger with it, that's not the tool's fault. That's a user operator error problem. So when we're considering which one should we use, we need to consider what do we need to do and why are we doing it. And this is where I have fallen into the trap of saying, let's just do Scrum because we're Agile. And the kind of work we're doing doesn't really fit that. Scrum works best when we don't really have a solidified endpoint. And this is why software teams use it quite a bit. You know you need a website, you know you need an app, but exactly what it looks like might change and differ based on feedback, based on evolving market conditions, based on something. And that's why they have these sprints. The team will sit down and say, okay, we're going to commit to this amount of work in 2 weeks. And then at the end of 2 weeks, we're going to stop and we're going to review and say, did we do it right? Julie K, here is what we built. Is this what you wanted? And Julie will go, yeah, that's great. Or actually, could you add this or change that? So then in the next iteration, we can do that again. And that's why the board focuses the work to just what they said they would do. And that's why the board has the sprint. It will give the team data around how it's performing within that 1 to 4 week period. It also lets the team plan out. You can plan out future sprints just by knowing, hey, this should happen in the future. So you can start to tinker with and fiddle with that. And that's the big difference and the big advantage of Scrum is that sprint, that iteration. As I mentioned, the pending work lives in the backlog. So this is another terminology thing that I'll be very clear on, or try to be very clear on. Kanban doesn't have a backlog, according to Jira. According to Jira boards specifically. So when I say backlog, I will do my best to make sure I'm referring to the Scrum backlog. And this is where your sprints live, the current and future ones, as well as any work items not in the backlog. Now, critically, if you make a work item and you don't assign it to a sprint, it drops into the bottom of the backlog. So we'll talk about where things show up and how we control what shows up on boards as we go. But this is another common frustration. A team member puts in a ticket and it vanishes. First place to look is bottom of the backlog because it tends to be hiding there, assuming they've set it up properly. Kanban doesn't have those iterations. Instead, it's focused on optimizing a workflow. And this is why we see just the statuses in the columns, because it's up to our team to understand what they're working on and make sure they're working on the right things. And if we exceed that work in progress limit that I'll talk about, we take something away. We say, hey, Tushar can work on 3 things. He's working on 4 things. Which one should he stop so he can focus on the 3 important ones? And this lets Kanban be agile because it can juggle and change and swap things in and out. And you'll see that on your board. Work items might move back and forth between to-do and progress as the team realizes, ooh, we took on too much work, or oops, we need to add or change what we're doing. And so far, everyone who's responded is using Agile. I love that. Quick reminder, hit the like button if you like this. Easiest way to support me and help folks find this. And check out that QR code right under my head. And join us in Discord if you're looking for live chat and continued support. Biggest thing about Kanban, again, all the pending work shows up in that left-hand column. So by default, it drops in there. So if it's missing, that's the place to go. Now, I briefly talked about this, but Kanban has this work in progress limit, or WIP limit. This is intended to focus the team. So if Kanban won't stop you from exceeding this limit that you as an admin can set, it'll just flash angry in red. And that's a reminder of, oops, we've got too much. Please tell your teams about this. I've worked with teams who don't realize that red means we got to stop and make sure we're working on the right stuff. It's there for a reason. It's like a stop sign. We can choose to blow past it, but bad things can happen. Same thing with the yellow one. We don't have enough work. And the limits we place will just be based on our teams. Larger teams might have higher limits, or maybe not, depending on the kind of work you work in. And again, with Kanban, work can go backwards. We might have to yank it out of the in progress column to make sure that we're focusing on the most appropriate things. In my experience, I work on systems a lot. We have tried to shoehorn in Scrum when really we should have been using Kanban because the chunks of work were big enough and understood well enough. Again, implementing a system off the shelf doesn't require a lot of coding. There's some configuration, but it's not the same as building something from nothing. So many of the systems teams I worked with benefited from using Kanban or a version of Kanban because it let them focus on what's most important when. Okay, back into Jira. Please keep the questions coming. The chat seems pretty quiet. I'll assume that means y'all are happy and know what's going on. And I'll drop another link to the form, but if you want to get popping up again. There's like a stop ad button I'm hitting, Dan. I'm sorry, it keeps popping up. Oh, Corey, what does shoehorn mean? I am sorry about that. A shoehorn, I haven't seen one in a while. It's like a bit of plastic where you're trying to put your shoe on and your heel stuck. You slide it behind your heel so your foot can slide into the shoe better. In the context of that I used it, it means to force something in. So we shouldn't really have been using Scrum, but we were told you have to be agile. So we figured out a way to make it work. Like we kind of crammed it in. We stuffed it into the box. We forced Scrum on the team and they kind of suffered with it, but it wasn't ideal. So again, shoehorning in is making something fit that maybe shouldn't have fit. But thank you for calling me out on that. Deckard uses Jira service Kanban for support, and in Jira, yep. Scrum projects but grouped into a Jira project as initiatives. Interesting. Now, it sounds like what Deckard Technologies is saying, and I'm assuming that that is a Blade Runner reference, Deckard. If it is, I really appreciate that. If not, I still appreciate it. Many teams will use different aspects of Jira for different things. So when we're talking about administering Jira boards, we're mainly talking again about Jira software management projects and working with the teams building the thing. However, the work items that show up in these projects can come from many places. It might be a customer reporting a bug to our support team, and then that support team makes a ticket for us in our sprint board. So just keep in mind that how these things get in here can differ based on how our company and organization is set up to best provide the information. Deckard, that makes me very happy. I'd be curious to learn more if you have time at some point on how you approached Deckard as the name. Sorry, folks, I'm going off on a science fiction movie tangent here with Deckard Technologies. All right. And Tushar used to making swim lanes from board configuration settings. Yes. So in the board, when I say swim lanes, it's typically just the group by function. At least that's the simplest way of doing it. Again, today we're just covering kind of the basics of boards, the differences, and then what methodologies are used to best support them. I have time. I guess we'll create a brand new board. I will show this process, and then we're going to dig a lot more into it as we go. Before, though, we create something, before we start using a system, we really need to consider how we're going to use it. This may or may not be on the exam, but it's something that we as admins always need to consider. When someone comes to me and says, hey, Rob, I need you to change the system or configure the thing, my first question I ask them is, why do you need to do that? What challenge are you solving? What problem is coming up that you need me to go do something in Jira, in whatever system I'm managing, to go help support you? And so before we even set up boards, we should be talking to the team to say, okay, are we doing this because we have to track work across projects? Are we setting up a Kanban board because we're getting frustrated with Scrum? What is the underlying why and reason? And that, kind of like how we understand our why for the exam, understanding the why of the board will help us better use it. To create a board, I'm just going to open up the project, and I've got this little plus. And you'll see I have two options, Scrum or Kanban. And so right away, it's kind of helping me remember what they do. Continuous delivery with Kanban, sprinting with Scrum. So I'll make a Scrum board. I'll have to give it some kind of name. I'll call this just ACA-905 for a quick name. And what should be included? So this is something we haven't really spoken about, but each board pulls a certain list of work items in. Stereotypically, it's everything in a project. And I say that because most teams I've worked with, they'll just say, oh yeah, grab all the work items in this project. That's where our work is, so we can track it on a board. That might not be what you need, though. Maybe you're using teams in Jira, and you only want to see work items that are assigned to members of that team. Maybe you want to see certain work types or a label. Or maybe you've got a JQL, a JQuery filter, Jira query language, that pulls in the list of tickets you need to track. We'll cover each of these as we go. For simplicity, I'll just say everything in the project and click Create. And that was it. Now I have a new board, and we can see it under the name of the project, Mobile Dev, ACA-905. And I've got this big long list of things. Now you'll notice some of them are already in sprints. And it's doing that because these work items are in a different board and have a sprint assigned to them. So this is something we need to consider as we have multiple boards in a project, or as we pull in work items from different projects. It is possible they already exist in a sprint. So if I open up this one, MOBL 10, somewhere in here will be Mobile Sprint 1. Now I might assign it to future sprints, but you'll see I'm stuck assigning it to a sprint. And I can also maybe kick it into some other project sprint. Typically, groups will just put it in a single sprint, in a sprint in their project. But this is where, as board admins, we need to understand we can pull in work from different places. For example, if I have a board that pulls in work items by team, maybe that team is working on different projects. They're working on this website over here, they're working on that mobile app over there, and they're working on some back-end thing to support the company. And I want to see one board with all their work. I can do that. but I'll end up seeing different sprints and different things show up. So this view can get a little bit more complicated and potentially more messy. In this example, I only have that one sprint, the Mobile Cowboys, 1 and 2, but you can see it just pulled in everything. I just said, give me everything in the project. But immediately I have an active sprint board that I can start using, and all it took was a few clicks to get me there. I can do the same thing for a Kanban board. When I click on Create Kanban, I have the same options in terms of what should we include. Is it by team, org type, label? So again, exactly what I pull in will differ based on my needs, and this is where sitting down to talk to my team and say, hey, Deckard, what do we need to put on this board? Okay, all the work with a certain label. Or if it's more complicated, maybe I have to go write some JQL, some Jira query language as a filter to first get that. And that'll give us some other complications I'll talk about as we go. All right, folks, quick coffee break for me, but what questions do y'all have? We're covering a lot of general stuff right now. Mainly, again, the focus is on the different types of boards, Kanban and Scrum, how they might be used, and then some of the generalized features of boards, things like those swim lanes, things like the filtering. I will remind you the filtering is super important. Please tell your team this exists. One of the most frustrating things for me when I first started was I didn't know I could filter, and so I spent a lot of time scrolling around looking for the one thing I thought I needed. Someone needs to learn to read cursive too, apparently. That's interesting. Any consequences if two boards have the same sprint name? I'm going to go to this backlog. It shouldn't break anything. It'll just be it might just be visually confusing. What I'm highlighting here, Tushar, this is telling me MOBL sprint 1, and then it came from this board. And if I click on this board, it'll take me over there. So this is the board Mobile Cowboys, and it's got MOBL sprint 1. So this is where it lives. What I'll see, though, is just that hyperlink taking me back. So there's no, as I understand it, there's nothing preventing you from having an identical name for a sprint. Many groups will just let, letters of the alphabet. I would do food starting with A, B, C, D, because there's 2-week sprints. There's 26 weeks. There's 52 weeks. That's 26 unique sprints. 1 letter of the English alphabet per sprint. But Jira will show us which project it's coming from. If I had 2 MOBL sprint 1 in 2 projects or in 2 boards, that could be visually confusing for my team. So this is where a naming convention is really important, especially for more complex setups. Naming conventions show up a lot in the sessions I run, not like oddly. So please keep in mind when you're naming them, have some consistent way. In this case, it's the project key and then the name of the sprint. That'll be good for most groups most of the time. You might need to, expand this a little, like maybe Mobile Cowboys Sprint 1, just to make it very, very obvious. Corey's asking, how do we set up quick filters in our board settings? I won't dig into this too much right now, but I'll take this as the last question. All the quick filters live in the layout settings of the board. So I will walk us through as we go, Corey, each of these things that we're seeing. Basically, all I have to do is define some JQuil, some Jira query language statement that pulls in the work items I want to filter by. So the assignee equals current user is one of them. Keep in mind, it is implied or it is just automatic that the work items in the sprint will be filtered by the project or by the board filter, which I have not spoken about yet and we'll dig into quite a bit. So the quick filter adds to already existing filters. In this case, for ACA-905, it's only showing me stuff in this project because that's how I set it up. So assigned to me would just be assigned to me in this project. Hopefully that got to your question very quickly. I'll skip that one for now. All right, folks. Our next session is next Friday. These sessions will just be Fridays, 6 a.m. Pacific. They're all recorded. And again, I am working on a recorded course that will dig into all this. That said, please study on your own. Make some time between now and next Friday to go into Jira, to go punch into Google Jira boards and just look stuff up. K Deals nailed it. Yeah, the system won't stop you from multiple identical sprint names. It'll just be very confusing. Please make time to study on your own. Please write down notes. Please talk to each other. Please join us in that Discord server and ask questions. I will do my best to give you everything you need to know about board configuration, but really it's up to all of you to make sure you're successful with it and that you make the time to prepare, especially if you're going to sit that exam. Because just a few hours of learning is not enough. You have to get hands-on. You have to experience the tool in field in different ways. So please get hands-on, join me, pop me an email, robert@heen.tech. I'll be happy to help answer questions. And if you haven't, please hit the like button. We're sitting on about 23 likes and about 40 folks, which I absolutely love. But also fill out that survey that's right underneath my head to get notified when the course is live and ready. Again, it is a paid course, but I'll send folks who pre-register or ask for help a discount code for it. Thank you, Dan. I'm just getting started too, my friend. Topic for next Friday. Let me go double check. Stop that. I will go check the topic for next Friday. Permissions and filters. So how do we handle permissions and how do we build filters for this kind of stuff? Corey, that's one of the more confusing aspects of a board. So definitely worth listening if you can make us live. If not, of course, it'll be recorded. And Corey, you're very welcome. Chad, thank you so much. I do want to thank you all for joining me. I really enjoy doing these. I took this certification 2 or 3 weeks ago. Oh no. And instantly demonetized. Yeah, it serves my fat fingers right. But thank you all for joining me to listen for an hour about boards. Again, please keep studying. Please hit me up in Discord, shoot me an email, DM me on LinkedIn, reach out to get support. This stuff is confusing. It doesn't have to be. It just requires a bit of elbow grease, so to speak. Tushar, we are. This is a 4-week cycle, so we're just getting started, my friend. All of these ACA and ACP series are multiple weeks. So this is just the scratching the surface and getting folks interested in what's going on. Marta, very welcome. Good to see you. If you didn't, please like and subscribe. Lots of other great info coming, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Oh, and check out my other learning courses. Got a lot of great topics over on learn.heen.tech. All right, folks. Well, thank you all. I'll leave the chat open for a bit, but appreciate you. Have a great day wherever you are, and I'll see you next week, if not sooner.